This is the Louie Tee Network.
Hey yo, what could it be? With me, your man, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2017 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names of the 2017 NFL Draft. I, of course, am your man, Louie Tee, taking you along on this journey as we get ever so close to the 2017 NFL Draft. I want to break down as many of the top prospects as we could possibly get to. We're talking wide receivers, and this is a guy that, not gonna lie, had a little bias against him going into the process. Felt a little bit better about him after watching some tape, but I'm still not sold, okay? Everyone was screaming his name last year, talking about how this guy was gonna be the man in the draft. And you know how the same kind of thing with Brad Kaya. Remember before the season last year, oh, Brad Kaya, look out for Brad Kaya. Where the hell is he now? Same kind of deal here with this receiver. Everybody was screaming his name, JuJu. I was saying, doo-doo. But I'm not here to name call, man. This guy's got some talent, man. And I opened up my eyes a little bit, but there's still a little bias in me. And I need him to win me over. And we'll see if he'll be able to do that. I'm talking about USC wide receiver, JuJu Smith-Schuster. And I think this guy's got some talent, man. And like I said, in a draft where it's not as deep at the receiver position, this is one of the better receivers in this draft class. I don't know if that's saying much. I don't know what that actually means, but I'm here to break this man down anyway and tell you why I think he's got a shot, but he's got some things to overcome, at least in my mind. Okay, don't be like me. Don't have a bias like me. But I've seen too many of these guys come along to forget what I've seen in the past. And so it is what it is, but we'll talk about his pros first. So much like a lot of the receivers in this draft that are of the upper echelon, he's got good size. I talked about Mike Williams. I talked about Corey Davis. I talked about Zay Jones. All of these guys have really good size in this draft. Add JuJu Smith-Schuster to the list of guys with good size in this draft at the receiver position at 6'1", around 215 pounds. This is a big, solid kid here. And another thing that I like about him, catch radius. This is a guy that's got a really nice catch radius. At 6'1", 215, you throw in 33-inch arms at 32 7/8 inch. You call him 33 inches is what I'm going to do, and call him 33-inch arms and say, this guy's got a really good catch radius. And when you put the tape on, he's not afraid to use that radius. He's not afraid to go up and get the football. He does a really good job when he does have position of boxing out a guy and going up and getting the football at his highest point. And so I like that about him. He brings a little bit of that edginess, almost a sense of entitlement. When the ball's in the air, it's mine. I like that about him. And I think there's some things that he does really well. There's some things that perturb me, obviously. That's why I have a little bit of a bias in addition to some other things. But he's got really good catch radius. He's got good size on him at 6'1", 215. And then I think he's got some good hands. That's the next pro. I think he's one of those guys, he's a natural hands catcher first and foremost. You give him an opportunity to get his hands on the football, I expect him to catch it. There will be some drops, okay? Some concentration lapses, but not the kind that makes you believe that this guy isn't a natural hands catcher. He can catch the football. He's solid, and his hands are very good. And I trust that on 3rd and 8, like in the Colorado game, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, with the game on the line, 3rd down, got to convert to win the game and put it away. He's going to catch the football, and that's what he did in that game, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I expect him to catch the football. He's got good hands, and I feel good about him in the passing game. ability to climb the ladder for the football as the next pro. And there's a number of different plays where you see this guy actually go up and take the football from a defender. And I'm like, that's pretty nice, man. And so he adds an element there. I already talked about his size. I talked about the catch radius. It's always nice when a guy with his kind of size and long reach can go up and climb the ladder and go for the football and has that ability. Some of these other guys like a Zay Jones, not necessarily the greatest at climbing the ladder and going up for the football. So this is a guy here that can go up the ladder, can climb and go get the football at its highest point. And I think that's another one of those strengths that you'll see from him at the next level. Maybe 50-50 ball, you throw it up there and he's able to come down with it. And what good is size if you don't use it down the field with a 50-50 ball, right? Right. Formational flexibility is the next pro for JuJu Smith-Schuster. This is a guy that moved around a ton at USC. I think his best play might have been in the slot. I think he was one of those guys that benefited from moving around because there are a lot of times where he got free releases off the football. They go play action fake, and this guy is just roaming free in the secondary, unmolested. No one's touched him because he was in the slot. So this is a guy that lined up outside, lined up inside. They moved him all around, jet sweeps and reverses and all kinds of, any way they could get the football into his hands, they did that at USC. So you have some formational flexibility with JuJu Smith-Schuster. Toughness. The first 3 minutes of the Washington game showed me all I needed to see. On the road, tough environment. You know, a Washington Huskies team that's vying for a national championship. You're on the road. USC was a hot football team at the time. They figured out their quarterback situation. They were on a run, but you're into the Lions' den, sort of, or in this case, the Huskies' den. And the first possession of the game, he comes out. Now, he only has 3 catches in this game, but all of them were on the first possession, and they were all tough, and they were all over the middle, and he took some shots. But he hung on to the football in some critical third down situations early in the game, which I thought helped set the tone for USC in that ball game. And so there's an element of toughness here. Even though I don't think he's the strongest football player, he is tough. He's not afraid to go over the middle. I don't think he's one of those guys that shies away from contact. So I think there is an element of toughness. He can battle through injuries. He's had some injuries, didn't miss any time at USC despite having some injuries. So this is a guy that I think is bona fide tough. Durability. I just spoke about not missing games. Despite having some injuries that he dealt with, some naggers, some things that lingered a little bit, he didn't miss any time, played in all 40 games at USC. So durability, not an issue. Again, as I've said before, I'll say it again. The best ability is availability and durability. You have those. You can't play, then I can't see the talent that you have. You got to be on the field to be able to showcase your skills. This man is on the field each and every single week. High football IQ is the final pro for me. And I referenced the game against Colorado. Remember, Colorado was one of the better teams in the Pac-12 this season. And they were hot early on, and USC finally caught fire. And this was one of their bigger wins of the season, or at least one of those ones that started to get them to believe, hey, we can do this and run the table and get ourselves into a big-time bowl game. And they ended up playing in the Rose Bowl. So it all paid off for them. And a big game at home versus Colorado. And 3rd and 8, late in that ball game, 3rd and 7, Sam Darnold throws him a BB on a comeback. Beautifully run route. He comes back to the football, catches the football with his hands, beats one of my favorite corners in this draft, Ahkello Witherspoon, man-to-man coverage. It's a great route. He comes back, snatches the football out of the air with strong hands, turns up the field, and really Colorado sold out because they knew if they pick up this first down, the game's over. So they sold out, came with pressure. It was man-to-man on the outside. He beat that sticky man-to-man coverage, and then he turns up the field and runs. He could have scored a touchdown, okay? He could have scored a touchdown. He was about 40, let's call it 39 yards away from the end zone. When he turns up the field, He's got every opportunity to run that thing, and most guys will take full advantage of that opportunity running into the end zone. What does he do? Slide down at the 13-yard line. What do I need a touchdown for? If I slide down, the probability of us winning this game, 100%. If I score the touchdown, it's probably 90%, but it's still giving Colorado the football back. We've seen stranger things happen. We don't want to go through all of that. How about I just take this seat on the ground and we win the game? That's high football IQ, folks. And you want more of those guys on your football team, guys that think the game through. They may have talked about it in the huddle. I don't know, can't confirm nor deny that. Doesn't matter to me. He got down on the ground and secured the victory for his football team after making a big play on 3rd and 7. So, with all of those pros in the rearview mirror, let's talk about some cons with this guy. Some out of his control, others not so much. Either way, I see them as knocks. You don't have to follow me on this one, but hey, it's my breakdown. Let's get to some of his cons. All right, so I almost feel bad doing this to him because this has nothing to do with him, but I can't help myself. I have biases against certain positions from certain schools, and wide receiver at USC just happens to be one of them. If you come from USC and you're a highly touted receiver, I always pump the brakes and say, hey, look, man, I've seen this movie before. Generally, I know how it ends. I don't want to see this movie anymore. So when everybody was talking JuJu Smith-Schuster last year, I was like, hey, doesn't he go to USC? They were like, yeah. I'm like, okay, heard enough. I don't need to see anymore. So look, he's a USC wide receiver. That's a con for me. Okay, I could go on and on. I could run down a list of these guys that have come in the league and done absolutely nothing. You remember Mike Williams. You remember Dwayne Jarrett. How about Patrick Turner? Okay, the list goes on and on. What about Damian Williams? Hell, I told you I didn't like Nelson Aguilar last year because he went to USC. Okay, I have a bias against these guys. And look, Nelson's a young man, only been in the league 1 year, but boy, did he look funky last year. I'm just saying, caveat emptor. You know what that means? It's Latin for let the buyer beware. I'm just saying. Next con, lacks game-changing speed. Okay, so that was always one of my biggest knocks. Before the whole USC thing, and I know you might think I'm poking fun, but I'm serious about my USC bias at the receiver position. There's enough evidence and empirical evidence, tangible stuff that exists, but nor here nor there. Bottom line is, my biggest knock on him was that the fact that he wasn't that fast. He didn't do anything for me. As I've said in the past, to me, he's a Pam Mom type of guy, okay? Proficient at many, master of none. He doesn't do anything great. He does everything okay. And speed was one of those things where I was looking for him to push himself over the top. I watched him a couple of years ago. I said, this guy's not fast. Okay, this guy isn't special. What is he doing that makes me feel like he's any different than any of these other USC guys? Okay, so I never was on the JuJu Smith-Schuster train, and one of the reasons why is because he doesn't have that game-changing speed. And so if you're not threatening that cornerback, he doesn't feel the need to come off and open up his hips. It's going to be hard for this guy to open up and win some of these one-on-one matchups and win at the stem of a route. I talked about him having a lot of free releases in the slot. I think that's how he does a lot of his damage, because when teams man him up, and I hate to bring this up because it's probably not fair to him. That Alabama game, he did nothing in that game, which takes me to my next con. This guy is a milk carton type of football player. Those guys really irk me. The type of guys that's supposed to be your best wide receiver, yet he's only got one catch for 9 yards like he did against Alabama in the first game of the season. Now, granted, USC was going through a little bit of an internal struggle at the quarterback position. Didn't really know what they had there. They hadn't discovered Sam Darnold yet, and Alabama really got after them at the quarterback position. They really got after them. So kind of hard to judge the receivers in a game where your quarterbacks are uncomfortable and flip-flopping in and out of the game. But notwithstanding, there were other games where he didn't do much of anything. How about a couple weeks later versus Stanford, where he's only got like 2 catches for 18 yards? What about later on in the season, or 3 catches for 34 against Stanford, I believe it was. Later on in the season, Oregon game, like 2 catches for 10 yards. I mean, again, what are we talking about here? Now, they won the Oregon game, so I don't want to beat them up. You have 2 catches in a game, you win, and you win big. I'm not going to beat you up, but the Stanford game was a loss. It was an ugly loss, and you only had 3 catches for 34 yards. My point is that I feel like this is a guy that he doesn't show up all the time in big games. He's not reliable, and I think in order for him to be successful, you gotta keep him clean. Because if he doesn't get a clean release, I think this is a guy that will struggle to get off the line of scrimmage. Speaking of which, I'd like to see him use more strength. That's another con for me. I'd like to see him be a little bit stronger, because when teams lay hands on him and are physical with him, I think he struggles. When he gets free releases and he gets to roam free, this is when this guy makes big plays, like he did against, I just talked about the Colorado game. He had 5 catches for like 118 yards, and I believe he might have had a score in that game, but he had a bunch of free releases in that game. You know, when you watch him in some of these other games, even the Penn State game, bunch of free releases in that game. Now, I will say there was some man-to-man coverage that he beat in that game, and made some really good plays, and he was huge in that Penn State game. Like I said, that's the thing that frustrates you with him. You know he can make plays, you know he can be a difference maker, but then, you know, there's times where you see him and he had an injury. Speaking of which, let's go to his final con and his injury history. Dealt with an ankle injury that lingered in 2015. Or excuse me, broken hand in 2015. Didn't miss any time though. And that's why I talked about his toughness. Had a back injury that really hampered him in 2016, which really explains the sharp decline in his numbers, because he was huge last year in terms of targets, catches, yards, all of those things. All of those things took a sharp nosedive in 2016. His numbers paled in comparison to what he did a season ago. So you wonder, well, what's going on with this production? Is it quarterback position? What is it? And a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was banged up himself, but he still went out and competed week in, week out. And you must give him credit for that. But all of that being said, I still feel some type of way about this guy. I said it before, I'll say it once more. Caveat emptor. Okay, let the buyer beware. He's a USC receiver. We've seen the history here. It's a very, very bad one. I've said all I needed to say. This guy has talent. Make no mistake about it. You get him in the right system and he's healthy, this guy could be huge for you. But I have my doubts. I'm not willing to sign up, but you can go right ahead, knock yourself out. That's JuJu Smith-Schuster's Draft Prospects 101 breakdown. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we covered all here on the Louie Tee Network. Come back. I've got plenty more breakdowns to come. Hey, man, it's receiver time. We're going to clean up the receiver position with one more guy, and we're going to move on to the tight end position before then moving on to the defense. I know a lot of you want to hear defense. It's coming. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.